Today, I'm very excited. I'm very jazzed up about this one. I'm going to talk about some ways that I hope faculty could, if they want, use digital humanities as a teaching tool in the classroom. So for folks who aren't familiar with this term, digital humanities, it's been around for a little while, and it's still, I think, an emerging field of humanities and scholarship grounded in digital sources, methodologies, tools, which we're going to talk about today, and platforms. And there's many ways that DH work can kind of look. And I just see it as ways of applying computing to humanities questions, right? Humanities disciplines look into the human experience. They look into literature, they look into history, philosophy. So I think when humanities, and all disciplines have been using computers for a little while, right? Like when the physics people started using computers, they didn't give it a special name. I think the humanities folks had to do this because they had to advocate for resources. A lot of this stuff, especially on a big research level, it does involve investment from institutions, servers. We're not talking about that today. I'm going to show some lean, mean tools. So I think maybe that's why we had to name this this kind of area, but it's a really broad way of thinking, of applying all these different text encoding, information visualization. Today, we're going to talk about mapping. The fancy word for that is geospatial analysis. So it's really just ways, the way I see it, people argue over this digital humanities definition, but the way I see it is pretty broad. Why am I even talking about digital humanities? So I just wanted to tell a little bit of this story. I went to one of those FRN workshops in, I think, 2016 or 2014 maybe. And it was with a professor of literature from NYU, this guy, Thomas Augst. And it was really cool. We mapped a novel, As the Great World Turns, which is a novel that takes place in New York City. It's a really good novel. It's by an Irishman, which I find so annoying, but it's a really great New York story. And we mapped it. We walked around the city. We kind of took photographs. We sort of did these entries that our professor assigned us to reflect on themes that were happening in the novel at the geospatial points we gave. And we had the support of a GIS kind of lab at NYU in their library. So this workshop, one of the things that kind of blew my mind was this professor. I thought at this point, digital humanities was very much like a research thing, like a faculty member got an NEH grant and they did a big digital humanities project, right? And it was a different way compared to doing a peer-reviewed article to do your research. This professor was saying, I love using this for my core lit classes because I get all these plagiarized papers, and this was before ChatGPT. He's like, I get all these papers, the students are just cranking them out, they're regurgitating stuff from high school. This forces them, they're sharing, they're cheating. This forces them to do a close reading of the novel. They learn an interesting tool. So he was using it in like his core English classes at NYU. So that really fascinated me. And then fast forward to, however, I felt limited here at St. Peter's. We don't have a GIS lab. We don't have two full-time people supporting this. And I saw it in this class. We had to use subscription-based tools. We had to, it was a different time. There weren't as good tools at your fingertips. But at the same time, then Dean Stoddart was trying to solve a few problems here at St. Peter's University. He was trying to create a space for our communication media study majors to be able to have computing power. And he had donors that really cared deeply about the humanities. And he couldn't sort of parlay those funds into a communication media studies lab. He knew digital humanities was a trend in humanities scholarship and that the donors would be kind of amenable to this Center for Digital Humanities. So this space was born in, I think, 2018 it opened. Very grateful. Wei Dong kind of took over at some point there and helped design this space. And the dream was always to gather faculty here to do digital humanities work. So today is my first day kind of trying to do that. It's been great though, having this space as a media lab. And I do think, as you see today, it's a lot of like digital storytelling, which definitely crosses over into journalism and media studies. So there's definitely a lot of crossover, and I'm trying to kind of show what I can share today. So if you're curious why people like this professor I met are interested in humanities, incorporating these skills into teaching, these are just some things I've learned about that, you know, faculty speak to. I haven't taught with these tools, but I have experienced it by using these tools. So just like you might assign a research paper in a humanities class, students, you'll see with these maps and timelines, they can be, you know, a research assignment. Developing critical thinking, a lot of the learning objectives you might already have for like research papers or PowerPoints, you can get through digital humanities skills while hopefully developing this thing called digital literacy, which you can maybe even use after graduation. Why you might want to use the timeline. So I took some notes from this book I have about digital humanities in the classroom, and this might be obvious for you, but you can ask your students to create timelines on different scales. So maybe your class is talking about a big historical period. You could assign students certain micro events within that, and then they all create a timeline and share it. So I know if I have taught and taught classes that have research papers, and one thing I find frustrating with teaching students sometimes is they don't focus on the details. You get a lot of broad statements and like vague, flowery language. I think AI has made this even worse. Yeah, specificity, the timeline assignment can force students to, you know, break down the Battle of Normandy into 15 distinct events or something, like really go to those details. You can also require your students, just like in a research paper, to do citation in their timeline. So that could be like a learning objective. Maybe the history professors can understand this a little more, but I could see it even working in philosophy. You know, you could use a timeline to understand how discourse has evolved maybe on a certain topic, maybe how ethical views on animals have changed, you know, over the centuries, or historiography, how people are analyzing, you know, how historians are changing their practice over time and coming to different conclusions. Maps, why you might want to use a map, a lot of similar things. You could still ask your students to do the citations in their maps. It does develop this thing called spatial thinking, and I was up late last night working on my maps for today, and I think I really developed some spatial thinking on my topic. I was a little skeptical of this, but it's hard to verbalize what it means, but you understand when you map a person's life, I think you understand it in a different way if they moved around enough. And you can map much more than people's lives. Obviously, we can map, you know, historical trends, stories and novels, fiction. You can map, you know, cultural movements. So there's really, I think the faculty can bring so many ideas to this. And you'll see these tools were designed a little bit for media. So they do a lot of mapping of things at news, you know, current events. So how did I land on these tools I'm going to share with you today? The real answer to this question is a woman named Patricia Dam, who used to be our web master, web developer. She, Patty was a lovely person, and she was part of our sesquicentennial team, which included Ilona McNamara, really John Walsh was the true author and historian, and Ginny Bender and Eileen Poyani, and we were tasked with doing sort of a history of St. Peter's for the first time, doing like a real history. We knew some of the printed histories of St. Peter's had historical issues, actually. Nothing was really comprehensive. We didn't want to write a book because we didn't have the resources and ability to write a book. I also thought this would be more accessible, so we decided to create a digital timeline, which has since been made into a book. And Patty landed on these tools, I think for a lot of the same reasons I'm showing them to you today. These tools were developed by Northwestern's journalism school, which is called Medill, and they're free. They're web-based, so you don't need, you or your students, they don't need, they could be using a Chromebook from the library, you know, and they could pretty much do everything I'm going to show. And you don't need a lot of coding experience. You don't need servers. It's good stuff. So that's my little introduction. And now I'm going to show you the Night Lab kind of suite of tools. So hopefully this projects page is showing up for the people on Zoom. And yeah, storytelling, I call these digital humanities tools, but this is coming from a media point of view. So they use the term storytelling. They develop these with students in mind. And there's a bunch of tools. I was kind of playing with this sound site last night. It's pretty cool. It lets you interject audio files into text. Yeah, so you can create seamless inline audio. So let's say students were writing an article for the Tribune online and they wanted to insert audio, but they don't know how to do that HTML. This would do like the coding for you. I haven't looked at VR stories, but what I wanted to, I haven't looked at Storyline, which is like data visualization, another big part of digital humanities. But the two I want to show, I think, are some of their oldest tools. So they've been around, which I think makes them pretty reliable. And the first one is this timeline tool. So if you were going to use this to make timelines with your students, you just go to this site. You can Google Night Lab projects, or someone asked me if I'd share this PowerPoint. I will, and I'll put the hyperlink in, but really, you just need to get on the old computer and go to Night Lab, and then find the timeline JS, and then they walk you through how to make a timeline. So to make your timeline, and I think this is challenging for sometimes humanities people, because we don't, and I was an English major, and I don't think I ever used Excel in my English classes or spreadsheets. I know other libraries that support this type of digital humanities work. They've said we had to introduce a workshop called Spreadsheets for Humanists, because our faculty have never used Excel. They've never used, they're scared of spreadsheets. I don't think that's true. Have you, so who's used Google Sheets? The math person's proud. Mark, you've used it. Have you used Google Sheets? Okay. So Google Sheets is part of the suite of our Google tools, like Google Docs. And what you would do to get your students to make a timeline, everybody would have to get the spreadsheet template, which is pretty simple. Then you make a copy in your Google Docs. And this is our, I thought I'd share the real thing. This is our sesquicentennial timeline, which is way longer than anything your students will ever do. I looked at it last night. It has like 200 entries. John Walsh was very exhausted. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you put in the HTML tags, or
Patty did on the first one because she wanted to get it fancy, but you'll see as you go down, most of the other ones don't.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to.
You definitely don't have to do that. If you want to make something bold, or John Walsh was very specific about his paragraph breaks and italics. So this doesn't have a text editor. So that's a good thing to bring up. So you kind of have to walk your students through these fields, I would imagine. We did not use the date ranges. You can have date ranges in there for things that might span time. And you don't need, you can just put a year. You can get more specific. We did when we could with the month and the date. I will show you what this all looks like in a second, but you have to define a headline, which is like the big text in bold, then the text beneath it. the media you're going to have to upload to Google Drive. We used WordPress here, but you're gonna have to upload your media to Google Drive to give it a URL. And I can help you and your students like with all of this. And this is a little bit of the digital literacy. How do we, and the media doesn't have to be a photo. I always think image, 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 because that's what we did. It could be an audio file. I believe you can embed a YouTube. There's a little bit of flexibility there with media. I can't, the media credit, when we talk about attribution, that's where you would, put your source for the media, and then the media caption. And then we didn't use type, group, or background, but I think these are additional fields. So you could make your timeline maybe a little more, you could group certain entries with different sort of subject headings if you wanted. So this is how you work. You could have students collaborate like in teams. Google Docs allows you to have shared docs. So if you wanted to make this a team assignment, you could do that. You can obviously have students like share it with you as the instructor to peek in on their progress. And yeah, also because it's gonna sort the entries, like you can just add an additional row at the bottom and it will collate it. So like if you sort of think like, oh, I wanna add, another historical point that came earlier, you don't need to worry about sorting your sheet or any of that. And when you're done, it walks you all through this, but you go to, oops, that's not what you do. You go to File, and then you go to Share. And then you go to Publish to the Web. You've probably never done this. I certainly hadn't. And then you publish, which I'm having trouble here, going to the bottom. And I've already done this. So see, it says published. I need to hide this, hide floating. I don't know how to get out of here. Anyway, what you do, let me get back into my sheet. Once you publish, you will copy this URL. And then you go back into the NightLab timeline tool and you paste in this URL. And then you should get your timeline. And then this generates a link that you can share. So that's how it works. You just go to, it's all web-based. It's all in that NightLab tool. Once you just go back to that same place, you got the Google Sheet template. It gives you an embed code if you wanted to embed it in a website. I was thinking how faculties could use this. There's also a thing called Google Sites. So if you wanted to like embed all your students' timelines into one web page, or there's different ways, or they could just share with you the URL or put it in Blackboard. So this is what the NightLab timeline, it does all this graphic design. Your first, this is like your header slide. John went all the way back to 1786 with our history. So you have like, this is your headline, this is your text, this is your image, and then media, and then this is your media caption. And you can also scooch along. You can see you could go through sequentially, and we have like hundreds of entries. So you wouldn't, I don't think, have students doing such a dense timeline. And we even John put a few things in, and this is something that really, when you talk about students with a timeline, you sort of start to grasp the concurrency of events or the overlapping things. So we're just talking about St. Peter's and we got to close for World War I, you know, and all of a sudden, oh my God, like the whole St. Peter's prep was, windows were busted because there was a, you know, huge act of espionage on US soil, and then munitions were exploded in Jersey City. So even we as these sort of St. Peter's experts ended up having that experience, I think, of learning and feeling like the concurrency of events. So this is our timeline and our spreadsheet, but it's pretty good to use. Ours, I'm proud of it, and because it dug a lot of stuff out of our archives that like no one's ever seen. I mean, we even found images because of that we didn't know we had. I mentioned recently Pedro Arrupe, who was a well-known Jesuit. He visited campus. Here's Billy Idol, Ilona.
It suddenly was Billy Idol after 1960.
Oh, I'm clicking around. I'm clicking around. Yeah, so on the bottom, you can click around. I wanted to get up into like a little more contemporary stuff. Yeah, so we didn't do citations. We used sort of a pretty small set of sources. So we didn't do like a citation in everyone, but that's how you use the night.
Show up right underneath there.
The citation? Yeah, you could do it here in the media caption, or you could have them cite the source for their text. I would probably do it here and then have the media caption just, yeah, so that's the timeline tool in all of these, I think. And let me know if you have any, hopefully we'll have time. I'm whizzing along, so I think we might have time for questions. Also, Night Lab puts sample timelines on here. They use this woman in computing one to kind of walk students through how to do it. They also have a really good YouTube video out here on it. They recommend 20 slides, not 200, because when you have 20 at the bottom, you can actually kind of click around in them, you know. And here's the media sources: Twitter, Flickr, YouTube, Vimeo, Vine, Google Maps, Wikipedia, SoundCloud, Document Cloud, and more. So, and then there's some good examples down here of, you know, how these are used a lot of times in media. Because like, I don't know, this is some wine website. Like they are not gonna purchase a subscription-based timeline editor, so they use Night Lab. And they talk about the history of wine. So let me know if you're going to use this with your class, because I'm glad to try to help or could bring them into a lab environment to maybe workshop it, or I'm somewhat confident that I can work with this a little bit. So the other one I've been playing around with is called StoryMap. Now, when I did the mapping like ages ago at NYU, we used a tool called Carto, and we built a spreadsheet. And we had to use like an open API, like on MapQuest or Google Maps, to find the coordinates. And it was very similar to that timeline process where we had to have like the heading for our map entry, the GIS coordinates, you know, the picture, the URL to the image we wanted to appear. So that's kind of what I was expecting when I learned StoryMap. I actually had a student learn this last year, and I was hoping for him to present, and he made an awesome map of Jersey City. And then he like got a job this semester and ghosted me. So I learned story maps, and I had so much fun. So this is my map I was working on last night. And this is, so when you make a story map, you will go to the Night Lab site, just go to the story maps thing, and it'll open up an editor like this. Yours will be, you say, create a new map. And you don't need to make a spreadsheet. It's all kind of done in this nice little interface. It's similar in that you have a title slide that's not going to have a geospatial point. So this was my title slide. I wanted to write about this woman, Juana of Austria. I find her interesting because She was kind of buddies with Ignatius of Loyola. She helped intercede. She was the daughter of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Her brother was Philip II, and she helped the Jesuits not get in trouble in the Inquisition and become an order, get approved by the Pope and stuff. She also became a secret Jesuit under the code name Mateo Sanchez. So I find her super interesting. Matt Sanchez, you know, you can't get any more generic than that, right? So this is all true. We have like existing letters of her between her and Ignatius. So I wanted to make a map of Juana, my poor librarian. People know I'm always talking about her. There also used to be a portrait of her in St. Peter's Hall painted by Oscar Mignon. I don't know where that picture went. If anyone sees it, let me know. So what you do is you make these slides. You get a slide editor. You upload your image. So you need to have the image saved on your computer. And there might be some digital literacy there, like how do you find a good image? How do we talk about pixel size? And you upload it. You put a caption for the image and a credit. And then you put your text and your headline. It's very similar. And then you search in this bar for a location. You can search for place names. This works with a tool called Mapbox. I have found a lot of times, especially dealing with historical stuff, I have to go to Google Maps, find the point I want, then you right click in Google Maps. It gives you the latitude and longitude for any point you want. It's a wonderful open tool. You could, and then you type in the latitude and longitude as they have it formatted here, LAT colon latitude space LON colon longitude, and it magically puts your geolocation in. And as you're working, as your student is working, they can preview how it's going to look. So that you can preview your map a little bit. You know, you can toggle back and forth between the sort of edit and the preview. You can add a slide, you know, at any time. So if you wanted to, and you just choose your file. I had something I was gonna add last night. Oh, I don't see the picture I wanted, but you know, you can add a picture. That's something I already added. And you can give a credit or type in the caption. I usually work like off a Google Doc, and I would recommend that probably with your students. So I already had some stuff going on, so you can, you know, and here's one where I had a little citation. So you can copy and paste. It will like take away any of your formatting, so you don't have to worry about that. And it'll kind of fix the font for you. And yeah, there is a little bit of a text editor here. So you could do bold and italics. You can also do hyperlinks. So if you wanted your students to like link to additional sources, and then you can move the slides around. So if I saved, I could like shift this, you know, up higher. And you can also delete. I'm actually going to delete this one because I didn't finish doing it. And then when you want to publish your map, it gives you the URL. And it recommends embedding it in medium.com. You can also use these Google sites that come in our Google Suite if you want to have your students like, you know, make an actual website. And let me see my map. So this is my map of Juana's life. And as I said, I've read a lot about this woman, but I really do feel like doing this. I did gain a spatial awareness. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Oh, do you want the mic so the people online can hear you?
Let's try this.
Wow, nice.
I know.
So much tech.
Yes.
Tech. Daisy.
Too close to.
To that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
I think it's the speaker.
Could also speak a little too loud.
Okay. How do I turn it down?
Is there a way to embed it like you did with the timeline, or it just lives as a link in like its own URL? Like can you embed it into
Oh.
a different website?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't see that when you clicked share.
So Professor Krell, Georgia asked if, in addition to just having a URL, if it would create like a embed code so you could put it into a website. And I feel like it will, but I might have to write this down as a follow-up question. Oh,
Oh, there it is.
Copy.
Okay, you scroll down.
you scroll down, folks. No, but that's a good question because
I didn't see it.
I'm still learning. So yeah, you can embed it into, you know, a website, a blog. They recommend Medium. Like I said, you can use this Google Sites.
Daisy, can you embed it into a document?
Like a Word doc.
Google Doc?
I don't know why you'd want to do that because the Google Doc you're looking at online, just look at the website. Yeah, I don't know. I can look into it. But I'm not sure you can do that.
Where is that published?
It's on the Night Lab server.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and it will give you an embed code. I don't know. Wait, can you embed HTML in a Google Doc?
No, it can't, no, Google Doc can't read HTML.
I don't think so. See, what you're getting here, all of this code is happening behind the scenes. Like you're not learning how to code this, but Night Lab created a cool, this is all HTML, you know, which has to be read by a web browser. Yeah, and you can click around kind of with the timeline, you know, you can click around like, what was she doing over here? Oh, her son died. That's a bummer. No, her husband died. Husband died.
16.
Yeah,
how old is that?
double first cousin.
Oh,
I have one other quick question.
Yeah,
that disease.
yes, sir,
Genetic disease.
for sure. Double first cousins. So yeah, Juana's mother-in-law was her aunt from her dad's side, and her father-in-law was her uncle from her mom's side. So you got some health issues. It's all STEM, right? So any other questions or good questions? Yeah.
Sorry, just one other quick question. So a lot of the photos that you found, are really old, right? So they're like probably under public domain.
Yes.
But if a student was doing something using newer images, they wouldn't really be allowed to do
Fair
that.
use, fair use, fair use. We have to assert that more as educators. Let's be real. Copyright law was not designed for this. I have never seen a court case. I mean, you could consult with a lawyer, but how are they going to sue St. Peter's? They'd have to show financial damages that someone didn't license their. I think faculty need to assert fair use, unless you're going to include it in some recruitment tool for the university or.
Well, I just know like in media, like
That's
we
different.
Never. Well, if you're doing like, let's say it's
What are you
students
eating?
that are producing these timelines or whatever, and then we post them on
Is
the
it good?
website, and you look at it.
I know, no, I don't like cinnamon.
Are you selling a?
Sorry.
So Professor Krell asked about copyright and if students are using copyright. First of all, my husband runs a media site and he uses images all the time. He asserts fair use just because when you're writing anything critical, you know, like he's talking about movies, video games, Marvel stuff, his writers, but that like newspapers and he used to work for Daily Mail and they don't license any, well, that's a whole nother story. They were like, you know, come after us. And they're a money-making for-profit thing. So I think we need to be, maybe teach students and say if this was for a profit venture, but if the Tribune's not selling, I have never, I mean, no. So I think, I don't know, I think we need to be, it's okay to use, you know, an image or a recording because I just don't think they're coming for undergrad students and their projects. There you go. There's also something called the Digital Millennial Copyright Act that helps with educational use of stuff. But yeah, and I mean, if you're gonna like, also you can't download, if you're gonna pirate a movie and like put the whole clip in there might be cases, but I can't even see how that would come up with this.
The
You know?
website when you put a movie, the website would just get shut it down. Anything illegal.
Yeah,
Copyright is pretty strict.
They have AI now. They mean, even if you try to do the inverse of the image, I actually do the inverse of the image, just trick them. But I got caught. Trickery does work with a guy who knows about it.
so I don't know. I had a final slide to see if anyone, actually, Sarah, Professor O'Brien mentioned that Dr. Luongo in education is doing digital storytelling. I didn't know that. So anyone who wants to use these tools, please reach out to me. I don't know if anyone wants to share anything else they're doing. Got some comments in the chat. Oh, they're about fair use.
When she says keep it in the classroom, I think she means not publish it. Like if once it becomes published for anybody to see, even if it's just like a website. I mean, the chances of someone coming after you are slim.
Right.
Still possible.
Right. I mean, the fair use clause of US copyright, I could do a whole presentation about it, but it does allow for commercial use of copyrighted information. It has a bunch of factors. One is financial. Can you show you're financially hurting the creator? One is the percentage of the work you use. So, you know, if you use a snippet from a song versus the whole song, no one can hear that snippet on your timeline and then not buy the song. So fair use is not just that's not actually totally true. It's not just for education or not for profit. Fair use is designed too for published uses of copyrighted information, but that's a whole, I think we're way too scared in higher ed. I mean, there's just no lawsuits like this going on.
I've come across some other usages of technology for humanities recently, but and some things that are being done are like within literature, taking works like, let's say, well, actually, when we were in Ireland, we went to the James Joyce Center, and we had all read a story, and then the guy was electronic, like mapping out the story in Dublin, and you know, and it was a really like, so it was the events, but also like sites and history, and you know, so that was cool. And then also with, you know, I specialize in, you know, Renaissance stuff, and so with that time period, attribution studies is a big thing. So like trying to see, did Shakespeare really write this, or these really the words of Marlowe or Middleton or whatever. And so a lot of data science is being used there to like, you know, to kind of diagnose or identify writing styles and like word usage and, you know, things like that, and quantify likelihoods of authorship and stuff like that. Like that was, there were a lot of people doing that. I was at a conference in London, Christopher Marlowe, this, you know, and there's always the Shakespeare authorship controversy. And so, you know, people are trying to dig into that.
Yeah, textual analysis is very big in literary studies because they've been able to like use computers, use computational techniques to identify. I think somebody even used Turnitin to find new source materials for like Shakespeare's Othello. I just remember reading that. So yeah, there's other way more ways than what I showed today to do digital humanities. Dr. Wyfall, for those online who couldn't hear her, she brought up some good stuff about the way different literary societies and literary scholars are using digital humanities tools. And that's another thing I didn't go through today, but you don't have to. I don't think most faculty are probably going to have these as student activities. But if you do, let me know so I can help you in any way I can. But you can also use digital humanities just to show your students, especially when you have the upper level humanities students, like this is what's going on in the field. This is what you might do in grad school. Show them really beautiful examples. Last night I was looking at, just because I didn't think I'd have time. I was going to showcase some projects. I was looking at James Baldwin in Paris and this whole map that showed you kind of all of his short stories and his diaries and everywhere different, you know, you could do, some of the bars and restaurants are still there, so you could do sort of a walking tour of Paris. And I was thinking, wow, this could be cool for our travel courses, even not to create a map, but also to see what cultural, literary, what maps might even exist out there. So, okay, I finished quick. So thanks for coming, online people. I'm going to end the meeting.